Iran knew that when she was firing over 110 ballistic missiles, besides the cruise missiles, the rockets, the drones, firing 110 ballistic missiles is an escalation to the region, is a dangerous escalation. If those ballistic missiles would have hit Israel, it would cause a dangerous consequences to the region.
What do you think that they are considering and weighing? And is one of them to not do anything at all, do you think?
Well, actually, Abby, yes, that is definitely a possibility. But let's take a look at, we've characterized these as basically three types of response. One is small, the other is medium, and the last one is a large type of response. So a small response could mean a discrete use of cyber attacks or commando raids or something like that. Medium response cyber attacks, maybe with weapons like an attack on a city or on an installation. More likely they would go after, the Israelis would go after military installations. And then if you have a large response, it would include basically everything plus more conventional things, bombing runs against certain military installations, bases. For example, you could have the attack some of the naval installations that are on the coast here. You could attack some of the airfields that are in these parts of Iran. So there's several things, several options that the Israelis have, but each one of these levels has different consequences associated with it, and that's what the Israelis have to consider.
So one of the interesting things about the attacks from Iran this weekend is just how ineffective a lot of what they were lobbing at Israel was. Not just that they were shot down, but some of them were complete misses.
Well, that's actually quite interesting, because one of the things that you have is really a high failure rate. According to some reports, that failure rate is somewhere around 50%. If that's the case, then really there's
I mean, that sounds bad, but is that, from a military perspective, as abysmal as it seems, 50% failure rate?
That's a huge failure rate, because what that means is if you're sending about 350 weapons of various types into the air against Israel, and you only have about 170 or so reach their targets, that means that a lot of the things that are going on are not really in concert with your planning. And your planning is done in a way that really doesn't normally allow for such a high failure rate. They didn't reach intended targets, and there were probably also command and control failures as well. The Iranians like to show themselves as being really tough guys. The problem is, if you have a failure rate that is very high and you don't reach all the targets, then you have a real problem. And one of the things that, on the other hand, though, that they did do was they were able to reach this airbase right here, and they were able to actually damage a runway there. The Nevatim Air Base has 3 squadrons of F-35 fighters, which is the most modern fighter that is in the Israeli inventory. So that is significant. So the question then is this going to be was this a deliberate attack, a targeted attack, or did they just get lucky?
They just got lucky. I mean, did Iran basically show its hand a bit in terms of what their military force could really do?
Yes, in some ways I think it did. Now, the one thing we have to keep in mind, Abby, is that the Iranians have a lot more missiles and drones where those came from. So they have a lot in terms of volume and in the capability to manufacture some of these weapon systems. But they don't have a limitless supply, and they will definitely be taxed if they ever get into a significant conflict with Israel and other nations in the region, and even countries like the U.S., which are outside of the region.
Yeah.
I think Israel has to strike back. I think the very pressures that are on the President of the United States indicate to Israel that they've got to be more self-reliant in terms of reestablishing their deterrent in the region. You can't have a deterrent if you can't dominate escalation. So if you stop right here, Iran says, hey, we got you, let's stop. Israel has to show that it has a more powerful riposte than Iran could handle in order to achieve security in the region. And if Israel doesn't do this, it's actually not in the interest of the United States. It puts us in a position that we become responsible for all of Israel's security. And we don't want that. Israel doesn't want it. So I think some kind of response is inevitable. Well, the United States pointedly didn't say we wouldn't support Israel if Iran retaliated against an Israeli strike. So Israel essentially has a get out of jail free card. Israel has the support of the United States. Israel is going to do what it believes it must do. Now, the real question here is, what's the status of Iran's nuclear program? Do they have nuclear weapons ready? Some people say they have one or two that may have been completed. Others say they're getting very close. But we're approaching the moment when everything could change, and Israel's very aware of this. So their safety in the region, their security for 70 plus years has been a function of their ability to dominate an escalation ladder against any opponent. I don't think Israel's going to give that security feature up just yet.